And just like that, we are here. Welcome aboard to the official YouTube channel, my YouTube channel of Health, Fitness, Wealth, Business. That's one S on the business, 8726. And of course, this is yours truly, Clifton Pope with Health, Fitness, Wealth, Business. And I tell you, this is going to be a very, very special live that we're about to do here on YouTube, without a doubt. And I'm grateful for this because it's always good to connect with such like-minded individuals who share the same beliefs and values and all of those things. And the gentleman who I actually have on my live today, he is also an author. He is also has his own publishing company called Thought Provoke Publishing, and he's also an health assurance agent on top of that. I would like to welcome Mr. Paul Bailey onto this live today. For those who are watching on YouTube Live, or for those who are watching the replay as well. And this is going to be very, very special because, long story short, Paul and I, we basically met within a networking event at an apartment complex about a couple of months back. And we've been meeting and we've been talking and we've been discussing, a way to kind of collaborate in all those things. And as we were talking, we got into some very, very deep conversations that involve so many things, religion, systems, all of those things, to where we decided, you know what, we're going to do not just only a one-off conversation and take it to social media. We're actually going to do a little series on this. So this is part one of, probably, I would say, at least a 5 to 6 part series, to where it's going to be centered around so many things, but we're going to be really focusing in on pretty much just dogma for the most part, and going back and forth between, separation of church and state, as far as, is it really separation or is it really illusion? But we're going to get into all that within this series, without a doubt. But I figured, Paul, we just get right into it, as far as just talking about, what is dogma? And because I don't think a lot of people know exactly what dogma is exactly. And let me see. For my perspective, of course, we'll of course give our perspectives on this, and based on what we've been talking about, for those who are wondering what dogma is, it's basically belief, doctrine, principle treated as unquestionably true and authoritative, often with little tolerance for disagreement, revision, or challenge. It's pretty much associated, as Paul and I realized, in so many different areas, from politics, social movements, family traditions, health and nutrition, science communication, organizational culture, personal identity. And I'm pretty sure you can relate to this as well, Paul. Dogma is not simply a strong belief, because a strong belief has to still be like examined. You got to look into the evidence. It's
Mhm.
always open for correction, all those kind of things.
Yeah.
It's usually involves, at least from my perspective, dogma for me, it usually involves like resistance to counter evidence, or moral judgment of dissenters, or loyalty to a group or authority, or just treating questions as threats for the most part.
Mhm.
How would you feel about that?
Yes. I agree with what you said 100%. To add on, dogma is essentially certainty without questioning.
Yes.
It's like, you know, this is certain. This is said to be true. But you can't question it. The more you
Mhm.
question it, the more you get pushback, whether
Mhm.
it's socially, whatever. You get pushback, and it makes you even have more questions. Like,
Mhm.
why can't you push back? And I mean, the truth is right there, but it's just like, it's ugly. So
Yeah.
it's like, you want to turn away from it. But yeah, as you mentioned, dogma is, just politics, religion, science,
Mhm.
um, relationships. Uh, it's like, because and this is kind of what I write about. There's systems involved in everything, essentially. There's like, and this is kind of what I want to ask you at the end. There's 6 systems involved in everything,
Mhm.
and so we are kind of like, as a society, we have to follow systems
Mhm.
to fit in. And, be cohesive. But a lot of the times, we don't think about the actual system and what the rules are, and we get drawn in by the illusion. So we're drawn in by the illusion, and then by the time we're drawn in, we don't even get this. It's too late to even question, like, why are we in the system? Does it resonate with us? Could it help us?
Mm-hmm.
And then on the back end, there's the audience that is like, if you don't do this, you don't do that, you don't, like, they're criticizing you, and it makes it harder for you to, make a rational decision. So that's
Yeah.
what I view Dogma as.
No, those are all great points, and to continue to add to this, to keep this conversation going, without a doubt, Paul, it's like a good question you could ask is, can someone hold a deeply important belief without holding it dogmatically based on everything you said? Some would say yes, some would say no. No, I would say yes to a certain extent, because the difference is often how the belief is held, and not only what the belief actually is. Because you touched on a very key word as you were explaining what dogma is to its overall core. And it's not only certainty, which is the first of the three elements, because again, from the certainty aspect of it, the person believes, like you just mentioned, Paul, that is unquestionably true. And certainty can feel like emotionally safe, especially when life is so confusing, as we know. I would even add two more elements, and you're familiar with this as well, Paul. I would add authority, because there's the belief is protected by, like, like from a religion standpoint, sacred texts. You could say from a political standpoint, leaders, traditions, political groups, communities, or maybe just even personal experience. And then you throw in the third element, boundary enforcement. Dogma creates a line between, the insiders and the outsiders, right? The faithful versus the unfaithful, the informed versus the ignorant, or the good people and the bad people. I mean, the way I see it, the issues is not that communities have boundaries, Paul. As you know, every community has standards, and the concern begins when questioning the boundary is treated as betrayal, without a
Yeah.
doubt.
Yeah, and to add to what you're saying about could you have deep beliefs without dogma? That was your question, right?
Yeah, 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 yeah.
Yeah, I do believe you can, but there's a difference. Like the dogma is where the dogma goes, the path that the dogma goes is that you can't question it.
Hmm.
Deep beliefs, you can question it, like, and that's the best way to have deep beliefs, just question everything.
Hmm.
And that's the difference between, like, a deep belief about science and dogma. Like, with science, you could like, it's investigative. You question things, you do experiments, you do studies, you do
Hmm.
analysis, whatever. You questioning things over and over, and it's not assumed that it's right. It always could be questioned. But then when you have, for example, what you had in 2020 with the pandemic, when you couldn't
Right.
question anything, that's an example of dogma. Because it's like, we're right and you can't question science. So you know,
It's funny how you bring up the pandemic, because there's actually a documentary that really exposes the pandemic. It's actually called The Plandemic and everything. And I highly recommend for everyone who's watching this live or watching this on the replay to definitely go check out the documentary The Plandemic, because that alone will change your life. I'm trying to look up who exactly it was that put together the Plandemic documentary, because I have it here in my
that's
notes real quick.
exactly
But
what it was.
yeah, 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 for sure. Here we go. I have it saved in my notes here. Actually, yes, the plant Mickey Willis. That's his name. I had to look into it within my notes. Yes, look up Mickey Willis, the Plandemic series. There's like a three-part documentary that literally breaks down the whole entire pandemic from a completely different perspective, that I feel like will definitely shock everyone who's watching this live or watching this on the replay, without a doubt. But just to kind of draw in a little bit of research as far as the connection between certainty and uncertainty and everything.
Mhm.
Research in psychology, Paul, I don't know if you were aware of this or not, you probably are, has research in psychology has repeatedly connected rigid belief patterns with discomfort around ambiguity and uncertainty. It's like
I've heard of that. I've heard of that. Yes.
yeah, yeah, yeah. It's like this need for cognitive closure developed in work, and it was developed by a gentleman by the name of Eric Krulensky and his colleagues, and they described the desire for a definite answer rather than prolonged uncertainty. And what I got out of the research was that it does not mean that everyone who wants clarity is dogmatic. It means that under stress, people may prefer a confident answer, even a poorly supported one over an honest I don't know. And that leads to, of course, does dogma always have to begin with arrogance, or can it sometimes begin with fear? And kind of bringing up your point that you brought up about the pandemic, I feel like this is a great segue into the next discussion question. I feel like dogma always begins with some sort of fear,
Yeah.
and the pandemic is a great example of
Yeah.
that because it's like we all know what happened with that. They forced us all inside of our homes. They literally shut the whole world down, had the whole world on lockdown, all of that. And it was kind of to promote this kind of fear at that particular moment in time. I wouldn't necessarily say it would be arrogance. I would say more so it comes down to fear in
I
anything.
agree.
And
I
it's like
agree.
when I think of fear, I think of like it like this. Are we gonna forget everything and run, or are we gonna face everything and rise?
Mhm.
So a strong discussion point can be had as far as dogma can begin as an attempt to create safety, order, identity, or belonging, because over time that protective belief may become rigid as time goes on.
Yeah, and that's one of the questions that I wanted to ask you.
Yeah.
Um, if can a society function without some form of shared dogma, or is it unavoidable? And it's like it's uh it's very interesting what you uh I forgot what you just you mentioned just about fear. That's what you mentioned
Yeah,
about fear.
face
Yeah.
everything and rise or forget everything and
Yeah.
run. Right, right.
Even you when you talk about religion, it's religion you fear going to hell, right? And I'm not, like I'm not saying that
Yeah.
you should have a moral code. Like, you shouldn't live and not, think about repercussions, but just looking at it from the context of, looking at religion and analyzing, reading the Bible. If you let go of the fear of going to hell, it becomes something different. Like you can
Mhm.
analyze it with more clarity. So it's like, it's like it is clear to me. It's clearly about fear. Like
It is.
people are joined into the illusion by their fear, and then they're trapped into something where they don't even read the Bible. It's just word of mouth, what they see other people practice, maybe tradition. And even when you go to the early days of Christianity, it's a different project than it is now. So it's like,
Oh man. There's so much we can go into just off of what you just said, but to kind of highlight it the best way I can, because we're gonna have plenty of time to talk about this for sure. You can make an argument, Paul, and we've talked about this as we were planning this series out. You can make an argument that most people are afraid of, religion, or they're not interested in it, or they kind of have this belief system around religion to where it's like kinda like what you just mentioned, it's kinda like a ultimatum kinda thing, and it kinda ties into, is there really a separation of church and state? Because they seem kind of identical if you think about it. We'll talk about this in another part of the series, but just to kinda plant the breadcrumbs to it, look at it like this for those who are watching on live and watching on the replay and stuff. If you really take our government and the church system, it's kind of there's one parallel there. It's like the government, obey our laws or you're going to go to jail. Religion or Christianity, obey our commandments or you're going to go to hell. It's kind of like it's literally kind of like the same thing as
Mhm,
far as like, either or obey or suffer the consequences.
mhm.
And if you really look at it from a religion standpoint, you can make an argument like that the Bible and everything. Don't get me wrong, nothing against the Bible. You can learn a few things within the Bible that'll help you become a better person. But as we talked about
Absolutely.
before, Paul, it's like the Bible at best is half of the truth. The other half of the truth comes from like, early Gnosticism Christianity, the where they really told basically the other half of the story that the Bible basically left out. Because you can make an argument that the God that's being described in the Bible ain't even really the true God that we're supposed to be worshiping. It really, really isn't. And if you look at it from the Gnostic text standpoint, the Old Testament God that they described is really called the demiurge. And the demiurge came from this fragment of all of these other aeons that the real true invisible force, the most high God, the original source of consciousness, or as the Gnostic text will call the monad, that is the real invisible force that we should be praising, which we have within us to begin with. And it's like going back to, of course, the Bible and everything, where the Old Testament started coming together. Most people don't realize this, that the God that says that I am a God and there is no one else besides me. If you really break down that statement alone, that should that should raise a bunch of red flags and questions within itself, because why would you have to announce that? As far as like that kind of sets off the whole dogma in religion in a way, because it goes back to the earlier discussion. That's just straight out of arrogance. It's like you shouldn't have to announce yourself as the only God and no one else is beside you. That, to me, that kind of sounds like something that like a
It's implying
dictator would
something.
say
It's
or
implying
something
something
like that.
hidden.
And it's kind of like that kicks off the whole religious dogma that's been basically been practiced for centuries and everything. And just to kind of finish up the brief overview, because we'll definitely talk about this another time. I mean, we talked about this, Paul, as far as the God that's described in the Old Testament, the demiurge, that actually came from one of the last aeons within this tree. It's like it started with the invisible force. Then it started with the mother, as far as Barbara Barbello, if I'm saying the name correctly. Then it started with, of course, the Son, the Christ. And then it started with all the other characters that we are known. And then, of course, it goes down to the last one being Sophia. Sophia was so amazed by everything that was being created through the true divine force. Sophia figured, I want to try to create something on my own without the monad's assistance. Hence, the demiurge came. Sophia was so ashamed of the demiurge to where it's like, cast the demiurge as far away as possible. That way, the monad and all the other aeons and everything weren't aware of it. Then from there, that's where it's like Sophia kind of created like this little cloud around the demiurge and created the overall throne, the quote unquote throne that God sits on and everything. And then that's where it was like, I am God and there is no one else besides me and all those things. And that's kind of what set off the religious dogma that we know within the Bible and all this stuff. And if you don't believe me, you could literally this is Google information. I just wanted to throw that out there. If you literally Google Gnostic texts, there's a whole website to where I think it's gnosticismexplained.org or something like that, that literally has like the origins of all of these things. So for those who are listening who are wondering what are y'all are talking about, just gave y'all a resource right there. And it kind of set the tone for like the belief systems of Christianity and the belief systems of almost all religions, because if you really think about it, all religions point back to Christianity, the ultimate source and all that. And it's like, from your perspective, Paul, why do you feel like humans naturally create belief systems?
Because we have a need for external validation. Like at our core, like we have a need for validation, period. like to be accepted and approved by
Mhm.
others. And it there's part of it that is good, but part of it could be dangerous because
Yes.
um the ultimately the approval from yourself is what's the most important at the root.
Mhm.
And that goes back into like gnostic, like in unlocking what's internal. Now it
Mhm.
doesn't mean to be selfish and only focus about yourself, because we're here, we're in existence with other people.
Mhm.
But the true validation and the true approval and what's going to really matter in the long term. Short term external validation might get you here, there, but it's not something that you should live off of. And religion is one of the many elements that uh, promotes external validation. Like, you're looking for approval from others. Sometimes you're putting on this performance, and by default, we put on performance here and there, but it's not genuine. It's not, we're not being something that's true and valuable. We're just putting on this performance act and making people see that, oh, look at me, I'm a Christian. Oh, look at me, I got. But
Yeah.
you're not really. What are you doing that's substantive to society and to yourself? So I
Mhm.
think we have a need to wanting to be approved by others, and there's part of it that's good because we need to we it's good to live in a civilized society, and part of that um is like having good favor with each other and have favorable views. And but at a certain point, when you're too much about trying to impress others and trying to get validated from each other, inevitably lies are going to start sprinkling all over the place, and
Mhm.
you're going to have to start accepting little white lies here, little white lies there,
Mhm.
little white lies there, until there's an avalanche, a mountain of lies. And it's like, do you want to live a lie? Is that how you want to live? Do you want to live a lie, or do you want to, okay, yes, this was tradition, this is what I was put up upon me, these elements of it is good that are good, but I need to question things. I need more information. And the thing about us as humans, see, we can't. I think it's irresponsible to be like, oh, this is how things are always done, so I'm going to do it. And like we should always be moving forward. Like, what could we become? What could we do? What better could we
Mhm.
do? And if we're always stuck in this is how it's done, this is what we're going to do, it's like,
There's no
what's
more room for growth.
what's the point of being human?
Yeah.
We're meant to grow, to get better. So that's how I feel about it.
No, I totally agree with you. And just to add to everything that you're saying, Paul, I mean, humans do not experience reality as a random collection of events. We naturally search for patterns, causes, meanings, identity, moral order, belonging, as you just described, predictability, and belief systems kind of help organize those needs, regardless if you look at it from religion, philosophy, science, culture, personal narratives. It comes down to how we understand the world and how we can navigate ourselves through the uncertainty and all that. Because again, it can be psychologically demanding. It really, really can. I mean, some people prefer a clear explanation, even an incomplete one, to an unresolved question. I know I can be like that sometimes, and it can be useful when it helps someone, take action because we've all heard the saying knowledge is power, but I totally disagree with that more than ever because knowledge, if it isn't applied, is entertainment at best. When you apply the knowledge, it becomes power through divine wisdom. And then that's where we tap into, of course, the Sophia archetype, which stands for divine wisdom. And then we tap into the gnosis, which the Gnostics call knowledge and all those things. And then it kind of ties into beliefs can also be looked at as social. People do not merely say, hey, I believe this. They may also be saying, this is who I am and these are my people. Since, hey, I am a Christian, I am a Buddhist, I am a Muslim, all of those things. I belong to this community and all of that. And I was actually looking into, again, throwing in some social identity research that I kind of looked into. um, it's associated with some gentlemen by the name of Henry Tajafel and John Turner. Apparently, they showed that group membership, kind of how I described, Paul, it shapes how people interpret information and evaluate outsiders.
Confirmation bias.
Yeah, exactly. And when a belief becomes fused with identity, changing the belief can feel like losing, your overall status, relationships with your family and community and morality, or even most importantly, yourself. So it's kind of like, yeah, confirmation bias, as you just mentioned, stereotyping, selective attention, all of this stuff. And it's like, belief systems in a way help our brain make quick decisions instead of evaluating every situation from scratch. People rather use the mental frameworks that they kind of were given in a way.
Yeah, and at the uh, at the root of power, I believe is identity.
Yes.
Um, and so identity is at the root of power, and that's what people are striving for
Hmm.
ultimately, like just some kind of identity, belonging, and it's nothing wrong with identifying yourself as this and that and this and that, But there's a law in the one of the laws of the 48 laws of power.
Hmm.
I think I might have mentioned this to you. Is think as you like, but behave as others. Sorry,
Yes. Yes. Yes.
yeah,
Yes.
exactly. Yeah, think as you like, but behave as others. So I mean, again, we're in society, so it's. I'm not saying to go out there and flat out lie, no, but um, unfortunately, in this society, when you tell, even when you have discussions about this, but when you tell the truth, like it it could cause a lot of damage. It could cause a lot of pain, and so it's you could have your own thoughts. This is why we're here. We're like we're having this discussion. It's important. It's important to have these thoughts,
Hmm.
but when you go out and you're navigating the systems, it's wise to behave as the others. Don't let off too much. Don't tell too much. Just fit in, navigate, and just it doesn't the system doesn't have to define you. It
Yeah.
doesn't have to define you. You just use it how you need to use it if it aligns with you, and you just you define yourself. Ultimately, that's where the real power is. You define yourself, and these systems, you don't want to you're not really looking for conflict. Now if conflict comes your way, you have to face it. You're not running from it, but
Hmm.
you're not really going out there looking for conflict. So you're not going out there, well, this is wrong about religion and that's wrong about religion. No, we're having a discussion here, and me and you are two respectable, knowledgeable people. So it's a blessing that we could have that discussion. You
Yes.
can't have that discussion with everybody. You can't have
Hmm.
that. So it's like identity is at the root. Identity is at the root, and I think is very, very, very wise, important for humans to make your identity uh, sourced from internally as opposed to externally. Whatever it is, religion, relationships, politics, science, like no, that doesn't define my identity. What's going on in here, what I unlock in here, that's my identity.
No, I agree. I agree with that without a doubt. And then again, you kind of basically answered the next discussion question I was going to kind of throw at you as far as what belief system helps you make sense of life and what would happen if it were seriously challenged. And you threw out literally the key word, identity. Again, it refers to the set of qualities, beliefs, personality traits, and expressions that define who a person is and what characterizes an overall group. At the end, it's funny how you bring that up as far as internally versus externally. I'll even take it a step further. We're so wrapped up about around having like a certain title, that defines us. And it's like, if you ask a question to someone like, I remember I had a particular guest on the podcast, and she kind of broke it down in a way that is very, very interesting as far as like, who are you, right? And most people will say, well, hey, I am this, this, and that. They'll refer to their job title. And then if it's not their job title, they'll be like, well, I am a mom, or I am a dad, or I'm this, and that. No, who are you exactly? And if you really strip away all the titles and you strip away all the identity and all that, kind of going back to the Gnostic text, and this is what the real true invisible force of the monad, and the real true invisible force of what Yeshua, Jesus, basically talked about, was that the kingdom of heaven is within us and it's all around us. Therefore, it even talks about it literally, and it talks about it literally in the Bible. As a matter of fact, I got that scripture pulled up right now because I remember doing like a whole sermon message on this. Here we are. It talks about it in the book of John, chapter 14, verse 20. And that day ye shall know that I am in my Father, and ye in me, and I in you. It literally tells it, and that's one of them. It's literally in the Bible that literally says that, hey, it basically saying we are one with the Father, the Most High God, and at the same time, the Most High God, the Father, is within us. That's literally what Yeshua was teaching to all of his closest disciples that didn't get the message entirely, but of course, Mary Magdalene, she got the message within the final days and within the final teachings that, of course, Yeshua provided. And then that's when she relayed the message and all of that to the disciples. And she kind of basically carried on those messages on how to be in tune with the Christ as far as being anointed and chosen ones. Therefore, we basically all have the ability to tap into the true divine power because it's already within us. And there's certain ways that we could break out of this cycle or of and everything, to where we'll definitely talk about it at a later notice, because that's definitely something I want to cover within this series, to kind of show how they can break out of this little dogma cycle of the Christianity religion that's enforced right now, and how they can get back in tune with the quote unquote monad and return back home to pretty much that true divine power that's within you, that's within me, that's within everybody. It's just a matter of just, flipping the switch and turning it on for the most part. And I feel like when we do that, that's when we establish our real identity and who we are and what we are about and what we represent, because we're all pieces of the puzzle. We're all pieces and fragments of the monad, the original source of consciousness, and the Most High God. And that's where most people get lost, and they forget that, and they feel like they need to comfort themselves by giving themselves titles that,
Yeah.
honestly, it sounds good on your overall identity, but it's not your real identity. And it's like this conviction that people are searching for in a way. And it's like, when does conviction become dogma?
Yeah. And
Where
to be
does conviction become dogma? And for me, I feel like, conviction becomes dogma when openness gives away to defensiveness, and truth seeking gives away to belief and protection, kind of like how you were talking about earlier.
yeah.
And just for those who are listening, of course, Paul, here's a few signs that you can realize as far as practical warning signs on when conviction can become dogma. We kind of touched on this already. Questions are treated like rebellion. You know,
That's the main way.
evidence is accepted selectively. Identity replaces examination, kind of like what you were talking about with identity. The person stops saying, I believe this because, and instead say, people like us believe this, as you were just referring to, or dissenters are morally condemned and everything. Disagreement becomes evidence that someone is stupid, evil, dangerous, or disloyal, or spiritually lost. That alone turns into a disagreement over ideas, into an attack on human worth, which is what our problem is within religion and politics and just overall society. Or better yet, the belief cannot be updated. Those are some signs to kind of look out for. And not only that, just to throw one more at you, the belief produces harm but remains unquestioned. Those are some things to kind of think about. So, what do you feel like, Paul, as far as when does conviction become dogma from your perspective?
You're exactly right. When you can't question it, the more you ask questions, the more pushback, the more shame, insults, whatever you get. That's when you're approaching dogma. If it was conviction, if you were truly convicted about it, you will leave no you would unturn every stone. You will
Hmm.
have at least internally. Again, think as you like, but behave as others. So at least internally, you know the truth. You know exactly what's going on, and
Hmm.
you at least you, and especially in this internet and AI age, there's no excuse about not getting the information. You have access to all the information, and at the root of what's everything that's going on, I know I mentioned identity, but uh, digging like a little bit deeper, I think we want people want the easy generally want the easy way out. They want the easy
Hmm.
way out of life, and they want to take shortcuts every step. And like you run a lot, you do a lot of running. When you run your miles, you don't take shortcuts, right?
No,
Because
I
if you
can't.
take shortcuts, it's gonna shortcut what you want to get out of it ultimately long term.
Exactly.
And I believe that not questioning things, not asking questions, whether it's politics, whether it's religion, whether it's relationships, that's taking shortcuts. It's
Hmm.
taking shortcuts. And again, I know, like especially with children, there's certain things you have to protect them from. I get it.